to make sure I get the details right. I'm going to talk about traditional Caddo houses and Caddo history, then about my experience helping build the 2016 and 2022 grass houses at Caddo Mound State Historic Site, which is on a terrace of the Nacogdoches in Cherokee County, Texas. And then at the very end, I'll talk a bit about archaeology and what we know about houses and house materials in the more ancient past that are known only from the archaeological record. Hello. Yay! This is the traditional Caddo homeland. The southern area. We're down here on the Nacogdoches in the very southwestern corner of the Caddoan area. Today, Caddos are a tribe of about 6,000 people. About half of them live in and around Binger, Oklahoma, which is not anywhere near, well, it's not on this map. It is southwest of Oklahoma City, and it is not on this map of the traditional homeland because Caddos were more or less forcibly relocated to Binger in 1859. The Caddo homeland is in the southwestern corner, southwesternmost extent of the southeastern pine forests of the United States. And in the Texas piney woods, as we've heard many, many times over the last couple of days, a lot of the uplands in this area are dominated by shortleaf pine and black hickory and oaks. There are small prairie openings throughout the southeastern piney woods, and they were either sought out or created by Caddo ancestors for villages and for agricultural land. Larger villages like Caddo Mounds are usually located on major rivers, and again, Caddo Mounds is on a terrace above the Nacogdoches, and they're near springs. And there is a spring just behind Mound A at Caddo Mounds, and there's also Bowles Creek, a stream that goes, a tributary that goes into the Nacogdoches right at that spot as well. And so there's a variety of riparian and wetland ecosystems where Caddos could find useful construction materials like willow and river cane and common reed and cattails. The tribes that speak Caddoan languages are generally located at the interface between the eastern woodlands and the Great Plains. And they were agriculturalists, so they grew crops, but they also hunted bison, and they traded goods between the woodlands and the plains. So it's no accident that Caddo Mounds itself is located at the intersection of two major transportation routes. You've got the Nacogdoches River running through there, and the trail that we now know as the Camino Real. And Caddos are very much a southeastern people, again in keeping with the Piney Woods theme. So they're more like Chickasaws and Choctaws and Cherokees or other southeastern cultures. And it's something that's reflected in this cross and circle motif that you see here. Those are brass ear spools. Yeah. Caddo ancestors, as we were just talking, Caddo ancestors were mound builders. And you see, got a mound and a mound in the background there, and there are 3 mounds visible at Caddo Mounds today. These are the Mississippian mound builders, so mound builders from about 1,000 years ago, not to be confused with the 2,000-year-old Hopewell and Adena mound builders who are in the Ohio Valley, or the even earlier folks who are building mounds in Louisiana. So yes, definitely mound building people. And in historic times, Caddo leadership was divided between a political leader, the Caddi, and a spiritual leader who was the Sinisi or the Chinisi, which I think reflects a value of balance in a binary or in a multivalent world. Traditional houses, which you see right here, are these round grass buildings. They're the regular buildings where families lived, also the regular buildings for leaders, and they're thatched from the ground to the peak in grass. Oh, I didn't mention the pottery. Caddos are famed in the past, or among archaeologists, I should say, and presumably in the past and today, for the quality and the artistry, especially of their ceramics, but also of other types of art. The Caddo tradition of building grass houses died out sometime in the 1890s, but their Wichita cousins, again, other Caddoan speakers, continued to build grass houses, not necessarily for their primary residences, but certainly on and off, and especially to educate people about their culture, right on through the 20th century. The Wichita tribal seal has a grass house on it. These 4 poles at the top and the texture of the thatching are 2 of the things that distinguish Wichita type grass houses from Caddo type grass houses, but they are very similar. This is the Caddo seal, and it has the dance ground as the central feature on their seal. Again, Wichitas were one of several tribes who were invited to build a traditional style house of their people at the World's Fair in St. Louis in 1904. The Caddo elder Phil Cross, who led the 2016 build at Caddo Mounds, he learned from Wichitas as well as from Caddos about traditional houses. And some things to note: you've got the frame of the house here, 4 poles on the top that kind of tells you it's a Wichita house. Wichita houses are also more likely to have interior support poles. Yes. And again, this exterior texture where you can see the individual bundles of thatching that are put on the house. Caddo houses don't have that quite so often. What else do we want? Oh, and notice how close together these horizontal supports, the horizontal supports for the thatching are. They're much closer together than what we have built in these East Texas houses. And I do think that's ecological, that Wichitas are in a place in where they have shorter grasses, whereas the grasses in East Texas are a lot longer, and so you can afford to have your horizontal supports a lot farther apart if you've got longer thatch. So the earliest historic accounts, good, we got them just barely on the top of the slide. The earliest historic accounts of Caddo grass houses and architecture, they're from the French writers who were part of La Salle's failed expedition that ended up shipwrecked on the Texas coast. The writers, Joutel and Father Anastasius, they note other types of structures, but they're especially fascinated by the grass houses, and we'll get back to them in a minute. And Father Espinosa also was able to describe the social aspects, the social process of building a house, as well as just the simple kind of physical construction process. I participated in the 2016 and 2022 grass house builds at Caddo Mounds, and I want to be clear that I was a small cog in a much larger effort by the people of Caddo Mounds and by the Caddo Nation. But I was there both years, and there was at least one previous house built at the mounds. This build was led by Scooter Cheatham, who later founded Useful Wild Plants. If you've seen those books. He conceived of this build as a rigorous experiment as a rigorous experimental archaeology, so it was 100% original tools and original materials and native materials. So these are stone axes that people are using and cutting things with chert blades. So quite an endeavor, 100% period tools. This house built in 91. It stood until 1995, with really nobody living in it, no caretaker. It was just kind of put up and left alone. And it became, started to fall apart, and it was ceremonially burned in 1995. So we got 15 years. And this was located, anybody who was at the mounds or you've been to the mounds, this is just across the road from Mound A, so it's in a different location. The 2016 and 2022 houses are going to be. Kuhut Piwat is the Caddo word for a grass house. There's a 30-minute documentary on YouTube of the 2016 build that you can view. I'll post a slide with a QR code for the bibliography for this project at the very end, and there's a link to that YouTube video. Curtis Craven was the documentarist in 2016. He's editing his footage from 2022 in his Vimeo page, which is also linked in the document in the bibliography. It has some of the footage that he's editing, and there are a lot more Caddo people talking Caddo voices in the 2022 footage, so I commend that to you as well. The 2016 and the 2022 houses were built on the same location. This is an ancestral burial mound, Mound C. Mound A is back over here on the other side of the road, and Mound B, which is both A and B are temple mounds that were the houses of the spiritual and political leaders were constructed and where they lived on these slightly elevated surfaces. So just to orient you in terms of where these are in relation to the mounds, this is the edge of the visitor center. What do I want to say? Oh, I want to say that both houses were built in a spot where, in all the hundreds of years that Caddo ancestors lived in Caddo Mounds, no houses were built at that spot. It turns out to be a low spot that flooded and was not. We found out why. And yes, so that spot was the 2016 and the 2022 build. And this is the 16 house. It stood for less than 3 years until it was destroyed by a tornado on Caddo Culture Day in 2019, in April of 2019, where many Caddo were present, as well as, of course, many staff. The tornado also took out the entire visitor center where people were sheltering. Several people were injured, some injured severely, and a woman in the parking lot was killed. So all of that's to say that there's been there's a lot of history and a lot of really heavy history between the 2016 and the 2022 houses. The Caddo, should say, the garden, Snake Woman's Garden, was one of the few things to survive the tornado. And so it has been a sort of a focus of renewal activities. Both Caddo Mounds and Caddo Nation began to look for ways to promote community healing almost immediately after the tornado. And a lot of that is focused on the garden. And this spring, this is a pre-tornado photo, but those of us who were there the other day, there is a metal sculpture, a tree, the shaho tree. Shaho is the Caddo word for not just the physical tornado, but the whole experience of a tornado. So there is a Shaho memorial sculpture dedicated to all the survivors of the tornado, and it's there outside the garden.
Is there any significance to the fence?
No, it is purely for modern purposes. I'll show a slide later on of what Caddo fields looked like, but no, they would not have been fenced. There aren't livestock. Back in the day, there weren't livestock to keep out, and there would have been 600 to 900 people living at the mounds at most times. So I think it's not the kind of place that deer would have been wandering around eating things. Yeah.
We were out there a couple of days ago, and I noticed there was a cottonwood tree that had been planted.
Yes, there were as part of the renewal activities. The staff at Caddo Mounds, Rachel Galan, the education director, and so on, consulted with Caddo people and said, hey, what should we do here? What can we plant? How can we start to renew things? And the two plants that they asked for immediately were red cedar, Juniperus virginiana, and grapes, which I'm assuming are muscadine grapes. They asked to have those planted, and cottonwood trees, also very important. I think especially since they've been living in Oklahoma, cottonwood trees very important to Caddo people. So those are the first of the heritage plants that Caddo's requested, and they are growing there. So. Good noticing, thank you. And Jerry Redcorn, the famous Caddo potter, has also talked about how she loves seeing cottonwood trees and how they stand up above the other trees in the floodplains. So those are just some of the things in the way plants help us heal. Say that. Here we go. So 2016 leaders, the leadership of Caddo Mounds has stayed the same from 2016 to 2022. So those mounds, those were the heavy lifters at Caddo Mounds both times. Elder Phil Cross, who does a lot of traditional crafts. He also makes bows from Bodark and knows the house building tradition, having built with Wichitas and also constructing Caddo houses. His apprentice, Chad Earls, was his assistant that year. Neither of them were able to make it for the 2022 build, so 5 Caddos stepped up to learn the Caddo house building techniques and be able to pass them on to other Caddos and presumably back to Wichita's should they need that. And the 2022 build was led by Caddo Elder Kay O'Neill, who serves she is the Oklahoma City representative to the Caddo Council right now. So, and while I was there, and I wasn't there for a whole long time, but I met Caddos from Ohio, Oregon, and Arizona, as well as from Oklahoma and Texas, who came to help with the build. So, and the process of a build begins, whether it's in the 1680s when Henri Joutel was there to talk about it, or whether it's 2021, it begins with a meeting of leaders, because that's how it works. This is the Caddo Mounds Friends Group. This is Victor Galan, who is the head of the Caddo Mounds Friends Group there on the far right. And in the past, the historic accounts, a family or maybe a pair of families, because sometimes there were more than one family who shared a house. If you needed a house, you didn't just go out and build a house. You went to your caddy, you went to your leader, and got permission to build a house. And along with your caddy, you determine the size of the house and set a date for the build. So the bottom photo, this is the ground that was prepared. This is the prepared ground for the 2022 house. And again, you can see that they've added quite a lot of dirt. After the experience with the 2016 house, added a lot of dirt to kind of lift up that area. And I think they've, even after the 2022 build, decided to add even more dirt to that low-lying spot. And for us, the next stop was to harvest the switchgrass, which we did in the off-season when the grass was brown. I think Phil Cross has said that harvest in the fall would have been traditional, but we found that the leaders of the Caddo house builds found that harvesting it and storing it so that it can dry out, you're getting rid of your insects and so on as it dries and ages, and it's pre-shrunk. If you put green grass in the Caddo house, it will shrink up, and then you just have to add more thatching later. In the past, I think those are both women in this picture. In the past, women were in charge of gathering the materials for the thatching and for doing the thatching, and men were in charge of the poles. And pine poles, we used between 30 and 35 poles in each house each year. And we chose them early in the spring. Well, Phil Cross went and chose them early in the spring and tagged them for straight growth and for appropriate diameter. So you're looking at probably 8 to 10 inches diameter on each of these poles. And in the hot summer of 2022, the poles needed to be cut, needed to be peeled immediately before use. And we kept them as wet as we could, spraying them down with the hose. You send one of the kids off, go spray the poles. And even so, we lost quite a few of them to splitting and cracking just in that heat that they couldn't be bent. The actual build began with ceremony and with the placement of the poles aligned to the cardinal directions. So that's the east pole that they're starting with, and start with the east and moved counterclockwise. The pole holes have already been dug. You can see the backfill there. And the 2016 house that was taken in the tornado is outlined here in cornmeal. The Caddo leadership did a lot of ceremony associated with the build of this house. And you can see that the diameter of the 2016 house is a little smaller. It was 26 feet. The 2022 was 28 and a half feet wide. And after this, the poles from the 4 directions are starting to be gathered together. Obviously, the scaffolding is not an ancient technique. In the past, it would have been a single tree trunk, either with the ends of the branches left on so that it makes a ladder, or simply, a larger tree trunk when somebody would just take the time to cut or carve steps into that. 2 young men are up on the ladder according to historic accounts, and I think it took 4 or 5 modern people, but we got it. And all the poles are attached together with a hoop, and I don't think we didn't point this out yesterday when we were on the field trip at Caddo Mounds, but there's a hoop made out of grapevine, and that's true. The hoop is an important feature of both Wichita and Caddo houses. And it's made a grapevine. The Caddo leaders harvested it on grapevine, again, an important heritage plant for Caddos, harvested it from the site. So I think a moving experience for a lot of people to be able to be on the land of their ancestors, harvesting the products of the land and using them in a Caddo house. Oh, here it is. Good. This is Caitlin, she grows a lot of traditional Caddo crops on her land up in Oklahoma. Starting to fashion that into the hoop. And it was lashed, that's red cedar lashing. There may be some other lashing material as well, but certainly red cedar bark was used to help lash that together. And note that you have kind of a cross and circle motif there that's still going strong after 1,000 years. I guess I will mention that there was more visible ceremony in 2022 than 2016, and some folks wondered if maybe that there's a gender difference, that we had male leadership in 16 and women in 2022. But it's also possible that this is just 6 more years of history between Caddo Nation and Caddo Mountain State Historic Site, and that people felt more comfortable with their ceremony being visible to outsiders of the park. So 30 to 35 poles, and our poles were 30 to 35 feet long. This is the frame. Some historic accounts describe the houses as being 40 to 50 feet tall, so our poles may have even been a little on the shorter side, and that's another difference between Caddo houses and Wichita houses that are described sometimes as being like half of an orange, as hemispherical houses, whereas the Caddo houses are taller. Again, I think that's probably at least partly ecological, that we just have taller trees in East Texas than in Wichita homelands. And you see the horizontal supports that are a lot farther apart than on that Wichita house that we saw at the World's Fair. And those are made out of willow, harvested. I believe they were harvested in the winter. I was a part of that. Jeff Williams did a lot of that. Harvested and then simply kept in water until they were needed to be used in the summer. They're lashed to the pine. Those willow supports are lashed to the pine poles. We used modern cordage. In the past, it would have been bark. And there are 2. You can see this east door. There's also a west door. According to Phil Cross, traditional Caddo houses only had 1 door and it faces east. You don't have a west door. I think there was almost uniform consensus among Caddos that you don't. It's just off. Don't have 2 doors. Don't have a west-facing door. But for ADA requirements, Americans with Disabilities Act, you do have to have 2 doors. Also, if you're going to have 35 4th graders coming to visit in their school buses and you need to get them out in a hurry, you need 2 doors. So if you visit, it may not look like there are 2 doors. The back door has sort of a camouflage door. It's just a piece of pine poles or maybe willow poles with thatch over it, and so it can be put over. You can cover the west door and have something that a 3rd grader could just kick off in an emergency and get out of there. So don't be fooled. It's just 1. Traditional Wichita houses, larger ones had 4 doors, and smaller Wichita houses did have 2 doors. So another difference between those 2 construction styles. We used switchgrass thatching both years. An improved variety of switchgrass, alamo, switchgrass alamo. Spanish accounts don't really mention what grass was used traditionally, but they do mention that the thatching is 3 hands breadth thick, so we're looking at over a foot, which is definitely what we used here. And that the thatching starts at the bottom and goes to the top. And everybody mentions this in the historic accounts. They start at the bottom. And it's because European thatching, you start at the top and go to the bottom. So this was just fascinating to folks who of course, the 17th century and 18th century French and Spanish writers were very much used to thatch houses from where they are thatching and thatch roofs from where they came from. They also talk about Caddos weaving decorations into the thatch, which is something which apparently was left to individual thatchers, what kind of pattern that they wanted to have. each section of the house, the bundles of thatch overlap vertically so that each section of the house ends up having more than one thickness, usually 2 or 3 thicknesses of thatch bundles there. And Wichita thatching, again, was traditionally 2 to 3 feet thick. Ours didn't approach that, but Wichita's are a little farther north, so I think they just needed a little more insulation in their houses. And more willow branches, you can see right there, willow branches being used to secure the bundles of thatch on the outside. We used ladders, modern ladders inside and outside the house, which sometimes necessitated the invention of completely new tools for safety, like that ladder stopper. Oh, another tool is called this is the whomper, as it's called, and it's used to align the thatch bundles into rows. So he's just aligning the bottoms of those rows, which again may or may not have been something done in ancient times or in the 18th century, where they're talking about weaving designs into the houses. Thatching is essentially sewing the bundles of grass onto the frame with a rope and a very large needle. You need a team inside the house and a team outside of the house. Our outside team was on a lift. That's you can see Tom, that's Caitlin's husband, is on a lift out there, and I think that's Caitlin actually, handing him grass. In former times, especially women would simply climb up those poles and just go up and tie the thatch on it from the outside of the structure. The needle, nowadays, even on Wichita houses and Caddo houses, is simply a straight stick, made from a dowel from the hardware store, 2 or 3 feet long. At least one bone needle, and it's a curved needle from a rib bone, has been found on Wichita archaeological sites. And I think it must be an antelope bone because it's larger than a deer bone, but it's not. It's more curved than a bison bone. So I haven't found out exactly what. All right. And this was new for 2022. Every other interior pole was reinforced. So there is some more interior support in the 2022 house. Which that's all I'm saying. It's something that was traditional in Wichita houses and happened only sometimes in the Caddo traditions. Oh, I should also mention the kid. There's a child right here, and it was just so great. There were lots of kids and dogs around, and it was just great to see the kids there. They added a lot of life, and it also means it's just part of their memories, so that when it's time for them to learn formally and pass this tradition on, they're ready to go, just from having kind of been exposed to it. They're also just a lot of fun to have around. Oh, here it is. We ran out of grass in 2016, and so had to cut green. And it worked just fine. It did dry out a little bit, and they had to stuff in a little more grass in weeks to months later. But it worked out. Rachel said yesterday that it takes about 3 acres of grass per Caddo house, so that is just a lot of switchgrass. Lots and lots. Oh, and the other thing to notice about this is the top of the house. There's no smoke hole, right? No smoke hole. It's a very tall house, and this is a feature, not a bug. The smoke gathers in the top and just wafts out, and that has the effect of acting as an insecticide or pesticide to get rid of mold and insects and prolong the life of this thatch. Oh, but I should say there's also some variation here. For one, Wichita houses have a smoke hole that's in the side, at the top, above the east door, basically up near the top, but above the east door. And there may have been some variation in time and space. So archaeologist Tom Middlebrook, who's based here in Nacogdoches, thinks that he has excavated the remains of a house where he's got a kind of round circle of clay in the center of the house, but of course it's a collapsed house, and he is sure that that's a smoke hole that was lined with clay to keep sparks from causing problems. This is the 2022 house interior, top of the 2022 house. Here, there is this engraving that does show allegedly Caddo houses with smoke holes. Now, the authenticity of this is, it's an engraving past in a kind of a whisper game. Somebody said to somebody who said to somebody who drew a picture of it. But it remains a possibility, especially given Tom Middlebrook's finding. And grass houses are a 1,000-year-old tradition. It would really be astounding if there weren't some variation over space and over time. So I think we have to consider the possibility that they're making the smoke holes on some of these houses. Yes.
Also, it doesn't show the doors on the same side.
Yes. Yeah, and I think Caddo's I know, and Wichita people I know, said you have to have an east door. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Here in Texas, we get our breezes from the south.
Yeah.
And so if that was used as a part of the ventilation coming in through the door and up through the top, that would be a reason to alter that.
I should have said these are primarily winter houses. Most of your living during a lot of the year would have been outdoors essentially in a ramada, in a covered porch. There also, each house doesn't have just the house part. There's a granary outside, there's a granary outside, and then there's the ramada, and there's probably a drying rack, and maybe even a corn grinding booth outside. So yeah, interesting thought. So, a lot going on. What do I want to say? Oh, do I want to say no smoke hole, blah blah blah, grass house. Oh, yeah, feast. Post-construction, we haven't even gotten through the construction, but in historic times, Anastasius and Joutel and so on in Espinosa, the entire work of construction is done between basically dawn and a little after midday. So these are pretty big construction crews, and the work is not done, you don't build your own house. While everybody else, the other community members, are out building the house, you, men and women, are preparing a post-construction feast for everybody. The families who are helping you build your house have been told to be there by the caddy. Remember back in the beginning, you asked the chief, the political leader, can I build a house? How big do we get? When can we build it? And the caddy sends his men out with sticks. And the caddy's men go to a family who's going to participate in the build and gives them 2 sticks or 3 sticks or 1 stick. And you get that stick, and that's a number of poles that you're responsible for providing, and the amount of thatching that you're supposed to bring with you. So all these families are coming as the build date approaches with their poles and with their thatch ready to. So there's a lot of planning, even though the actual construction only takes dawn to midday. There's a lot going on. So and afterwards you all have a big meal, you eat a lot, and you go home happy. The family does the work of finishing off the interior later on. That's not part of the original initial construction. Beds, there will be beds against the wall, usually on about half of the house, beds against the wall. Each bed has a little alcove around it, usually made out of matting. And sometimes with a curtain in front of it so that you have an entirely private sleeping space. Henri Joutel was thrilled. He'd been a refugee on the coast for so long, and he got up to a Caddo house and had his own sleeping quarters. A very happy man. Well, okay, LaSalle just been killed, but he's a most happy. And above, on the other side of the house and on the second story, because you've got a lot of vertical space up there, that's shelving with baskets made from woven from river cane or birch bark baskets that are storing nuts and seeds, a lot of agricultural produce, storing your extra pots, your extra clay pots, and also keeping grinding equipment so that you can grind indoors in bad weather in these houses. This is the quality of construction that we should be thinking about in terms of what the matting looked like. This is a 3x5 foot mat on display in the Dallas Museum of Art, made from river cane by a Muskogee woman, but it certainly is comparable to the kinds of things that would have been used used as dividers inside the house. Well, the floors were also covered with mats, so this is essentially a carpet. These aren't dirt floors. These are carpeted floors, more or less. This is, here's what the fields look like. This is the Turan map, 1691. Got the river going through here. This is an entire village. Villages are strung out along the river, sometimes for as long as 2 miles. Individual plots are separated by strips of forest, and sometimes in Wichita, sand plum by plum trees and grapevines are used as dividers. And you can see again each house, but there's also a granary next to the house, often ramada, and you have here a mound with a very large grass house on it, and a ramada for shade out in front of that. So it's a whole landscape. Houses aren't built in isolation on the landscape. They're aligned with other cultural and natural features of the landscape. Oh, and the spiritual leader, there's one account where the women are going to plant a garden in front of the house of the chief spiritual leader so that he can have something green to enjoy. When I'm going to skip through the archaeology stuff pretty quickly here, hitting the important points. But when archaeologists have examined Caddo buildings, it's been through excavation like this. This is Mound A at Caddo Mounds. And through remote sensing, magnetometry, ground penetrating radar, resistivity, and so on. And they're really good at showing the floor plans of houses, and you can see mostly circles here with, there's a few kind of squares. So archaeologists, being who we are, have tended to classify Caddo buildings as either round or square, and that's a fair reduction. Most of the excavated buildings, as you see here at Caddo Mounds, are round. And Caddo Mounds people started living there in the 800s, but most of the occupation is 1000 to 1200, 1250. And that seems to be true of the excavated buildings. This is the excavated buildings. Here's the magnetometry. We saw this image. Here, you've got the circular buildings, circular. Here's one. With a little circular one with 4 posts in this, and we believe posts in the center. Archaeologists call them button houses. But my point here is that they're circular. They're circles, 81,000 to 1250, and it's true of it seems to be true of the unexcavated houses and not just the excavated houses. So it's not just sample error of the excavated houses. This is Oak Hill Village, which picks up chronologically just where Caddo Mounds leaves off. And yes, it's mostly circle houses. There are a few rectangles, 1250 to 1450. And Pine Tree Mound, which is owned by the Nature Conservancy now, is a third site where a lot of houses have been exposed. Occupation starts in the late 1300s, goes to 1650. Houses are mostly circular. So. And the same is true in other parts of the Caddo world in Arkansas and elsewhere. I do want to say, interestingly, if you start leaving the Caddo world, you start going east and north into the middle Mississippi, and like the people of Cahokia and Etowah and Moundville, Wickliffe, and so on. Regular houses are all square. You can see so many rebuilding episodes here. It's the special structures that are round in the Mississippian world, and it's flipped. It's flipped in Caddo. The Caddo regular houses are round, and special houses, like temple buildings, are going to be rectangular. Fire. What am I going to say about fire? There's so much to say about fire, but I will not. Fire is the means of preservation for most of plant material in Caddo houses. That most plants become compost, but if they're burned, if they're charcoal, they stay in the soil. I look at them under the microscope. And what's really interesting and most striking to me about the archaeology is, given the presence of 3 acres of grass, of dry grass, 24/7 fires, how very few burnt houses there are. Regular houses. The temple houses are a whole other story. So I think it speaks to a culture of fire awareness and fire respect. I mean, certainly caddos knew the regenerative properties of fire and use that to burn prairies to get better grass for the bison so that you could go hunt them and so on and so forth. But there are very few, and so I think that again is a culture of fire awareness. This is from here's one Caddo house. Here's another. They were able to tell that this is the overlapping Caddo house because they had one place where the postmates crossed each other. This is the one Caddo house I'm aware of that burned down, and we have the complete ring of burn posts. And this is what they look like in the ground to archaeologists. Here's a post, here's a post, here's a post, here's a post. And the type of wood, the wood charcoal that was in all those posts, is some kind of red group oak. From the wood charcoal alone, you can only assign it to red group or white group rather than to a species. And this is red group. You can see the pores there that are open. In the white group oak, these pores are occluded with sort of almost bubble wrap like. It looks a little bit like bubble wrap, and that's why white oak makes better wine barrels than red oak that has these open pores. So that's almost all we know archaeologically about Caddo posts. We do have a few posts where it's not the whole house that burned, but those are, again, they're mostly oak, some hickory, and there's one or two pines that may be from a house at Caddo Mounds. And it's interesting to me that oaks and hickory is very common in these upland pine forests, but these are upland pine forests, and it does surprise me a little bit that we don't see as much pine in the Caddo houses. Oh, I should talk a little bit more about the posts, though. People have asked about bodark using very rot-resistant woods like bodark and red cedar, and part of it is growth habit, that with bodark, wonderful heavy wood, but it just doesn't grow in these beautiful straight 35-foot lengths. You really have to prune it to do that. And red cedar, Wichita's use red cedar in their house poles preferentially. Caddos tend not to. I think for caddos, red cedar is more reserved for ceremony than it is in Wichita culture. And the thatching was switchgrass both years. I think I mentioned that for the 2016 and 2022 houses. Stuart Owings, a Wichita elder, says that we don't use switchgrass very much. We don't use that so much because the deer come eat it. And I think maybe it just speaks to building traditions during less populated times when you're having one house out away from other houses and the deer might come eat it. They use common reed that the deer don't eat, and common reed was the thatching material for the 1981 house at Caddo Mounds. So that's certainly a possibility. Other wetland grasses are a possibility. Some of the historic accounts just say prairie grasses, and that's it. I think the Wichita Tribal webpage at one point mentioned blue stem, but unclear which blue stem that might have been. I guess I should mention the ties. The cordage to tie the willow onto the horizontal frames. Wichita, traditionally it's slippery elm bark, probably black hickory bark. If you harvest it fresh and cut it into strips and tie that tight, once it dries, it will not be dislodged, is what I have been told. Oh, yes, and Henri Joutel Caddos taught him how to make ties that substituted for leather out of black hickory bark. The dogs kept eating all the leather that he had, and so for his horses, he used hickory bark bridles. There we go, and that's black hickory, and what black hickory wood charcoal looks like. And again, I think that bark wood, the inner bark of black hickory was really useful in making these houses. There's a lot of cane associated with Caddo houses, but I think that's not so much for the poles. It's certainly not for the thatching. It's too stiff. I think it was more for the what the mats were made out of, what the flooring was made out of, and what the alcoves were made out of. And willow, of course, seems to be traditional both for Wichitas and Caddos for making those horizontal supports, the lathing. Did I mention about 2 inches? About 2 inches wide. And these are tented landscapes. It's a pleasure to be here with people who understand, think that native plants grow well in their regions, but in order for the plants to grow the way that you want them to grow, whether it's to grow for lots of flowers and lots of berries, so you give them lots of light in all directions, in order for them to grow the way you want them to grow, you have to create the conditions, whether that is putting fire to your forest, and fire to stands of cane so that you have even-aged stands of cane so that when you split that cane for basketry, you split each stem of cane eight ways, and if your cane is all the same width, the same age, and you split them 8 ways, then all your cane splints for basketry are the same width, and it's just a much easier way to work. And again, burning the prairies so that you have stands of the grass that you want for the thatching, or in the pine holes that, if you want a hickory tree to give you lots of nuts, you give it light on all sides so that it grows out in all directions. But if you want a single straight pole from your pine, you don't give it. You want them leggy, essentially, and that's what Caddos and other indigenous people. This is a quick way of explaining it. I'm going to refer you to Kat Anderson, Tending the Wild. This is a very long book that was based on her dissertation, that was based on 20 years of working with indigenous people in California, and it is the nitty-gritty details of indigenous landscape management and how you prune particular plants for basketry, how you manage for wild tobacco, whatever resource it is that you want. The breadth and extent of indigenous management of landscapes, I think, is still deeply underrated. And she even has predecessors, Forgotten Fires, and William Cronin, Tending the Wild. So I commend that to you, or at least know that it exists. And I think I should stop. But I will invite you to Caddo Culture Day. Has been moved out of tornado season and out of hurricane season, and it will be December 2nd from 10 until 3 at Caddo Mounds. Yes, and it's a sort of event that brings people from all over the landscape to Caddo Mounds in the same way I think that construction activity brings plants from all over, from the riparian areas, from the prairies, from the pine forests. It ties people together, and it ties communities together. So come see that, and that's the bibliography if you're interested in any of the sources, or all of the sources. Thank you. Questions, or shall I?
One question. Yeah, I had a question. So is there any work being done on a similar, I have seen that Tending the Wild, in California. It's an amazing text. Is there any work being done on something similar for Texas prairies, Texas landscapes? There's certainly plenty of history. Is there any work being done on a text that would put all that into one resource?
That is a great idea, and there should be. Yes. There needs to happen, and there are also a lot of Caddos who are interested. Again, Caitlin Polly's doing a lot with Caddo, Caddo plants, and I'm also considering. Are you in a position to?
Well, I'm with Native Prairies Association. Well, I'm the Dallas chapter president of the Native Prairies Association, but I work in post oak woodlands in western Oklahoma. And there's so many interesting ethnobotanical plants there, but it's a lot of the archaeological resources, like RIDS database, for instance, is a lot of western species. And so I find kind of when we're working in the woodlands, there are things that I would like to talk about with technicians, and
Yes.
but it's hard to
There's
cobble
no
those
source.
resources. Yeah.
Yeah, work of the late Alston Toms at Texas A&M University is more prairie focused because he's interested in geophytes, edible bulbs, tubers, corms, and so on. And that speaks to this, even when we think now about we need to do landscape disturbance and burn the prairie and so on. There's a lot of underground disturbance that happened in the past, and that sort of management is really underrated, and Alston's was a great source on that. So yeah, keeping. I'm not too. My office is less than a mile from the McDowell Ranch, where native prairies are based now. So we'll talk some Saturday. Anything else? It's been a long day.
I have a question. I don't know if this relates or not, but you mentioned as we leave the Caddo areas and moving towards
Yeah.
the Mississippian,
Mhm.
how homes become square.
Yeah.
So do you think there's a relationship in leadership? Like, I came across a source where somebody was explaining that in Italy, for the Etruscans, if there was a change of leadership or management or government, form of government was different when square homes indicated democratic, while round ones indicated top down, or like switching.
Oh, okay. I think if anything, it's the other way around because there's some Middle Mississippian.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
what
yeah.
that's what I thought. But then the professor from university, I think works in Miami, somewhere in Miami, university, something like that. He was explaining that the square homes were like just like we have the grid. They were more about equality. So I don't know. It's not
okay.
an idea that really.
Yeah, because if you go, I mean, Cahokia have you been to Cahokia at the juncture of the Mississippi, St. Louis, Mississippi, and Missouri rivers? That's a top-down society
Yeah, quite.
there, and they're a square house folks. And not that Caddo was particularly egalitarian in the way to say some of the plains, the Lakota, and so on were. But yeah, that raises.
I would think it's more.
It is a
squares, more-
great anthropological, and then a great anthropological question about why Caddo is different from the rest of the Mississippian world. Because they are.
about these necropolises that you find in Italy. You know those cemeteries that
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, but it's something. Yeah,
Really
it's a very interesting question about why. Yeah. Cool. Let's go check this out at auction.